What is up, everybody? And I would say welcome back, but this episode's a little bit different because we have a crossover episode, between Big Five Pod and Five Features. So why don't we go around and introduce everybody? Of course, I am Kyle Morello, co-host of Big Five Pod. We've got Jake Copestick, co-host of Big Five Pod, and Joe. Why don't you introduce yourself here?
Yeah, pumped to be here, guys. My name is Joe Panicelli. I do the show Five Features, which is supposed to be like a YouTube interview show where I talk to players, coaches, and journalists all surrounding the Big Five. Admittedly, it's as you guys know, probably it's pretty hard to get these guys on sometimes. So I've been struggling. I've been hitting the DMs hard, but I'm scratching and clawing. But yeah, no, I kind of hit you guys up thinking to get you guys on, talk maybe a little. I think our styles are a little different. You guys we'll kind of cover the sport more extensively, and I'm sort of like interested in like the people in the storyline and stuff like that. So I thought it might be like a nice little crossover. So thanks for doing this.
Absolutely, absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on and well, to be on both of our podcasts. Obviously, this is a collab episode. So we're
Yeah.
very, very excited to have this little mesh here. Cope, I gotta ask you though, how we doing?
Doing well. Football season finally ended for Penn, so I'm kind of feeling the effects of it now. I was kind of struggling to get to the last couple minutes of that LaSalle game with it being a blowout, but nice to be able to relax a little bit. A lot of college hoops going on. Was able to watch St. Joe's yesterday, tune into LaSalle tonight, so relax a little bit. There's some college hoops on Thanksgiving and the holiday season's coming around, so all good on my end.
All
Oh yeah.
right, we love to hear it. And sorry, it's a little bit of a rough ending for Penn's football season. So I know you had to kind of deal with some stuff there, but things happen. At least you're not the New York Jets. We don't need to talk about my Jets. Um, All right. Well, listen, why don't we get off here? We're gonna skip Cope's quick hitters this time. We're gonna get straight into game action. Um, Although Cope, I will say we on our last episode might have jinxed the Big Five. Because Joe, and I'll fill you in if you didn't see the last episode. We were talking about how this weekend wasn't exactly the most competitive games in the world between some of the teams that the Big Five are facing. So we both picked Maryland and Villanova as the game of the weekend. Obviously, that turned out victorious for Villanova in a very low scoring affair, which we'll get into. But the rest of the weekend didn't go so well. So Joe, I'll start with you. What was one game in particular first, and then we'll get into some of the rest of them that you were very surprised by as a result?
Yeah, I mean, I think you have to start with the St. Joseph's Hawks. I mean, I'm a Hawks guy. I've talked about that. I try to hide some of the favorability I have towards them, but sometimes it bleeds out. You lose to a team in Texas A&M Commerce, who I think just became Division One. I think 2 years ago, 340 in Ken Palm or something like that. The team with a lot of expectations that I'm sure you guys have hashed out, and a lot of stud guys, especially in that backcourt. That things are looking a little up this year, and then you come and lose a home game like that. It was super, super deflating. So going into that game, my expectations were pretty much about as low as you can get. I thought, if they lost by about 15, I think that would be a realistic shot there. And for them to sort of come out there and seemingly like not scared at all. You got freshman guys playing at Rupp Arena against guys wearing Kentucky on their jersey on the side next to them, and guys like guys like Xavier Brown are kind of going right at great players who are ranked so way ahead of them. It's really incredible to see how sort of they step to that occasion. So for that game to go down like that, the timeout, I'm not going to talk about that and sit and complain about the Cam Brown timeout at the end there, but what a great game. I mean, I'm proud of those guys for the way they represented the Big Five.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to go to that Kentucky game, I mean, obviously, the 96 to 88 loss in overtime. Like you mentioned, Joe, there was the timeout at the end that probably should have been called, but wasn't called. It would have given St. Joe's an extra 2 seconds to get a playoff. Granted, it would have been from, I believe, full court, based on where they rebounded the
Yeah,
ball. But uh, either way, you want to have the opportunity there. They didn't, unfortunately, get it. But Cope, for this Texas A&M Commerce game, I mean, there was just a lot that went wrong. One of them being that they shot 18 of 66 from the field, which is, if you're keeping track at home, 27.6%. So not great. Um, we talk about how great this team can be scoring wise. It just wasn't there. Was this, obviously they did end up fixing some of their problems against Kentucky, which we saw, and you can get into as well. But do you see the potentially being an issue where like these games where they'll just go extremely cold will happen, or is it going to be a mixed bag?
So yeah, I mean, I think it is a concern with the Hawks. Obviously, like you saw the scoring on display last night, but you look at the Fairleigh Dickinson game last year. You look at a game like they had against Commerce. I mean, even the game they had last night. Granted, they played a very very good Kentucky team at home that, as young as they are, the talent and scoring is off the charts on that team. But you have to be able to defend. It's kind of been a problem under Billy Lang. You have to be able to defend, and that's where your ceiling is. You look at teams that don't have great offenses, but have really good defenses and rebound. Well, you look at a Houston, and we're kind of getting off topic here, but look at a team like Houston. The defense is there every night. They'll win games where they shoot poorly. You know that's going to be there every night. And I just think because that defense is a wild card, even on a night where the scoring is there, like results can happen like they did. And even when they score as much as they did, it's just hard to put up 100 in a college basketball game, especially against the Kentucky. It's hard to do that when you have to put up. Um, Obviously that wasn't really that was the issue in the Commerce game, but still you have to imagine if they only give up that many points, they'd be able to outscore a team like that. So I do think it not only is it going to be a problem this year, it just kind of has been a problem ever since Billy Lang has been there. Is the defense going to be there all the time? Consistency across the board is my big concern because there's this team's way too talented to fail. They're talented enough to hang with the Kentucky. I'm telling you, I believe in the guys on this team, but you know, ever since Billy Lang's been there, the record, the bad losses, in a year where he had so many expectations, we've been singing their praises. We really like this team. To have a loss like that, which I think is the worst loss in his era, in this year with these guys and these expectations, it's
Yeah, I mean it was definitely tough to see. Or not I guess unfortunately, yeah, they were not the only team that didn't really perform up to expectations this weekend. We can look at Temple, we can look at LaSalle barely squeaking out a win. I mean, they did win, of course, but that was definitely not a great showing. And then Penn as well, losing in overtime, even though Clark Slackard put up a 31 piece. I guess we'll start with Temple first. I mean, losing to Columbia 78-73 on Saturday, despite Heiser Miller's 29 in that one on 10 of 22. Actually, fun fact for you guys. So Miller had 29, Picarelli had 18, hit 4 of 8 from 3. And Jewel White had a Jewel White game, maybe a little less than he showed the first few games of the season. He had 11.6 rebounds, 5 of 10 from the field. Everybody else in Temple's lineup outside of those three guys had 15 points. And 7 of those came from Zion Stanford. So they're not getting a lot of scoring outside of those guys these last couple of games. They shot 35% from the field, 33% from 3, and they were out rebounded 37-30. Of course, maybe not the most notable Ivy League team out rebounding someone who's better than them. If you remember from Baylor and Yale in the NCAA tournament, I believe that was 2015 or 16, with Taurean Prince, but or maybe even before that. Honestly, some of the years blend together at this point. Joe, we'll start with you. I mean, how concerning is something like that? I mean, they had been playing well, Temple. They were 3-0 coming in, and they have this game where they lose at home. How concerning is it when, they have some guys that maybe aren't contributing at all to the score sheet?
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's concerning. So where do you guys? I mean, you guys follow Temple a lot more than me, so I kind of flip it back to you guys. Where do you rank them sort of in the mix of this Big Five? I mean, I think the clear spot is probably not to get off track here. I know you guys.
No. I like
game,
this
but,
discussion.
I think the clear one, despite the loss, I think is still Villanova. So where do you think Temple may rank in that? Yeah. Yeah, I like to hear you guys take on that because I sort of have my own idea.
Cope, you first.
Flip it back at you guys.
So, I was really starting to be high on them a little bit after I thought the Drexel win was really impressive to go on the road, but then with the Columbia loss, that was tough to watch. But I think they could potentially be at a 2 here, and it's just kind of hard with St. Joe's and Nova being on the same side because I think those are the 2 best teams. But I think they can beat LaSalle. I think they can play in the Big Five championship. There was a lot of unknowns with them coming into this year. It was kind of hard to gauge. I had them being ninth, 10th in the American, just with all, a first year head coach. Basically, everybody's new. You've Heisher Miller, who I referred to as now like the elder statesman, who would, last year he played with a bunch of upperclassmen and a bunch of other guys who had a lot more scoring load. And now it's like, hey, man, like, you got to be the guy now. And he's certainly capable of that. He's shown that. But I'm a little higher on them because after watching them play, I saw them play in person at Drexel. They play very connected. They don't play like a group of 12 or however many transfers and new guys that have with Zion Stanford coming in. Like, they're very connected. They play hard. The concern is the size, but as far as shooting and pace goes, like, there's a lot to like. So it's a bit of a wild card. Nova and St. Joe's that are definitely like your 1-2.
Yeah.
I don't see why Temple like couldn't be that third team. And now they're gonna they're gonna play Ole Miss Wednesday. I want to see them against like some better competition. Like we just saw, Joe's play Kentucky, LaSalle just played Duke. I want to see them play like a Power 5 team, and then I'll kind of see where my gauge is at. But I think 3 or 4 is where they could be at for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would I'd probably have to agree with you. I think 1 Nova, 2 St. Joe's. I think I'll put Temple at 3 only because they have the win over Drexel. That's tough also because LaSalle beat Drexel, but I do think Drexel's a better team overall. But for the sake of this not being for me not being a hypocrite here, I'm gonna put LaSalle at 4. And then I'll probably put Drexel at 5 and Penn at 6, only because Penn. Actually, no, I'm gonna put Penn at 5, Drexel at 6 because Penn did have the win over Villanova. That cannot be discounted at all.
Yeah.
So I think ultimately at
It's
the end of the year that might flip flop, or even maybe Drexel can go up to 4 or 3, depending on how they finish the year. But right now, these first 3 weeks or so of the season, 2 weeks or so of the season, that'll probably be my 6. And listen, there's obviously going to be some wiggle room. I think probably Villanova and St. Joe's are your clear cut 1 and 2 for the entire year, but that bottom 4 can go either way. I mean, if Temple starts faltering a little bit, I can definitely, I would definitely put them down. If Drexel or even Penn start to pick it up, yeah, I mean, things are fluid. So it'll be real interesting. I mean, obviously, those top 2 teams are those top 2 teams, and that holy war is going to be something different this year. I can feel it, even though
yeah.
I think I don't want to say it would have more juice if it was at Hagen Arena. I think obviously St. Joe's would have a better chance of winning if it was at Hagen Arena. But
Yeah, for sure.
this will be a very, very interesting holy war this year.
Yeah, yeah. I think LaSalle and St. Joe's are also in a similar boat where, like, how could you really kind of gauge where they are as far as the competition they play? It's so polarized in the sense that, like, they go out and obviously like they play really well against Kentucky, but they also play like Stonehill. They got Sacred Heart next. Like Villanova might be aside from maybe Penn, which is funny because the Big Five actually means something now in this non-conference schedule. Villanova and Penn are their actual most realistic matchups where they're getting a really 2 good teams that they can actually battle with, and you might be able to tell actually who they are from those 2 games. And last thing on this sort of obviously we're recording right after LaSalle just fell to Duke, Cameron. But my take on sort of that, I think Kentucky, I think Duke is a lot better than Kentucky is right now. I also think St. Joe's is better than LaSalle. I think that the idea really is that, all these experts or guys who cover the national sport are saying, like, if you want to play Kentucky, you don't want to play them. But if you do want to play them, you want to play them in November, not just because they got 3 guys who are, 7-footers on the bench, but because they're such a young and experienced team. And St. Joe's was able to sort of come in there with some guys who, weren't afraid and, have some experience under their belt and get those guys like kind of while they're still the elements of randomness and they're kind of all over the place. So I think LaSalle St. Joe's could be a good matchup, especially between those 2 backcourts. So I'm looking forward to that matchup. And they play like 100 times this year.
Something like that.
There's a shot that they could play, I think, 4 or 5. Like it's super unrealistic. Would be hilarious if it happened though. Like God forbid they somehow play each other in the NCAA tournament. You could be looking at 5 times. I mean, they almost played a 3rd time. If they had each won, I think they were in the quarterfinals.
They would have had to play each other in the semifinals.
Yeah.
Of the A10 tournament last year. Yeah, that would have been incredible. Listen, there is a very real chance that they play 4 times this year. That's
and there's parity in the Big Five once again, which I mean a lot of people probably aren't too happy about. It's Villanova fans probably, but I'm stoked about it. It's gonna be a fun event.
listen, Villanova fans were going crazy in Twitter after, as I'm sure you probably saw after the Penn loss, which we talked
Oh
about a
yeah,
little bit in our last episode. But listen, I personally I love the parity in the Big Five. I mean, how can you not? Like it's you want the competitive games. You want these teams to be good. Kind of like when St. Joe's and Temple were both in their heydays in the 90s and 2000s. Like
yeah,
that's what we want. That's what we want. And obviously the playing field is not even for every single team. Penn has their academic restraints, which of course on the flip side of that means you're an insanely smart human being if you're going to Penn. So that's that. But they have standards and maybe not as much as the other schools, maybe not as much as them. And obviously Villanova's the big program. Temple's the historic program. St. Joe's has been too a little bit. So like there's different imbalances that each team deals with. But when they all get together and they don't have to travel very far and fans from each team can go to each arena because, it's proximity, there's nothing better than it. And that's why the Big Five is
right.
what the Big Five is.
Are you guys expecting a big turnout? What are you guys expecting for the event?
I'll let you answer first, Cope.
Okay. So I actually just saw on Twitter today, not to like hate to not give you a direct answer here, but I saw on Twitter today
Yeah,
that I saw that they had actually given like student allotments, and there was people at Temple at least saying like, "Hey, we're gonna bus you down there. We're gonna actually give out
yeah,
like student tickets and everything." So that's good to see. I'm anticipating because here's the thing. I don't think you're gonna stay there for 3 games. Say if you're Temple and you win next Wednesday against LaSalle, like I don't, and you're in the championship game, like I don't imagine you're going to stay for all 3 games if you're a Temple fan. I'm hoping that they can at least fill the lower bowl. I'm sure there's going to be a ton of media there because you're going to have the student media from every school. Like we'll be
yeah.
there.
Nice.
I hopefully we'll see you there as well.
Yeah,
It's I'm hoping they can at least fill the lower bowl. I was also like, 45, $50 a ticket, I think is a little rich. Like if you just want to get butts in the seat, then so I'm hoping that they can fill the lower bowl. Long story short, and there can be like a couple thousand people there. Hopefully, a lot of students. But with the whole like logistical thing, and are people going to stay for 3 games? Like, yeah, can you really bank on that? Like, I
right.
hope I'm wrong, and I hope there's a lot of people there. But I also think like the first year, the novelty of it, like I actually do think there will be a pretty good turnout. So hoping,
Yeah,
hoping like at least lower bowl. For what I'm thinking, because then you think about it, like if you're gonna pay, I saw the tickets. If it's like $45 to sit in the upper level, like you can go to a Sixers game for that. So I hope like the tickets don't scare people off. But I'm hoping that there can definitely be like a real good crowd there. Hopefully, a lot of students and fans from each school. I think that first year will like put you to better spot. Hoping for the best.
Yeah, same here.
yeah,
I would love for the lower bowl to be filled. Definitely for the championship, like Cope was saying, I don't think all 3 games are going to be that filled. Especially the first game. But you never know. It's like Cope said, novelty first year. Uh, there's a lot that could happen. And also the thing with the $45 for the ticket too is it is probably a little pricey, but it is also for 3 games. So that does help. I mean, Cope, like when we go to summer league and we pay $60, it's too much. First and foremost, it is too much, but we're going to 4 games at least. So you get your money's worth. So I'm hoping that this is the same way too. So I hope that answered your question, Jay.
yeah, yeah. But I think guys like us are sickos. We like to watch this stuff. I mean, I think we don't need to we think we might over exaggerate thinking that like the normal person wants to watch a lot of mid-major basketball in Villanova. So that's where that price point does get a little interesting. But yeah, you're right. It is 3 games. It's the first year. I think there's excitement, especially with the parity we talked about. So I think it's going to be a really fun event, and I agree. I don't think people are going to stay for every single game. I think it might be maybe we pop over to Xfinity for a little bit, come back, make a day out of it.
Yeah, I would not be surprised if some fans did that. Or even was in Xfinity for the first game or game and a half or so, and then came over
Yeah,
and tuned in, especially if Villanova's there. I know there'll probably be a lot of Villanova fans there. Because that's almost their second. I mean, that is their second home essentially. So, definitely could see that. All right. Well, let's talk a little more basketball here too. Some things that happen and are coming up. We haven't talked actually a ton about Drexel, so let's talk a little Drexel here. They did have the best weekend of the Big Five, other than Villanova. They had two games, which you don't really see too often, a Friday and a Sunday. But they I'm trying to scroll up to it real quick. They beat Fairfield 65-47. Amari Williams had a great game, 13-13. Jamie Bergen's also contributing in that one, and they killed them on the boards, which I feel like you would expect from that one. And then on Sunday, they beat Queens in North Carolina, 62-52. Garfield Turner was the star of this game, 13 points off the bench on a very efficient 6 of 7. And also Odin Jr. 11-9 on 5 of 7 from the field. But this is the one thing I did want to bring up, which was concerning. If my math serves me correctly, and it does not always, as Cope knows, but if my math serves me correctly, they went 6 from 31 from 3 combined in the two games, which is a little concerning. I know they played some teams that they are better than. Queens, obviously, we've talked about Cope, how they transitioned to D1 last year for the first time when they played LaSalle last year. So we're getting to see them again this year with this game that just happened. But very concerning. They also haven't shot, I don't think, above 60% in either game from the free throw line. So I'm a little bit concerned about that, especially, coming off a game where they didn't shoot too hot against Temple either. Before that, which Cope you saw. So, Joe, I'll start with you. I want to get your opinion on this Drexel Dragons team. Yes, they had a couple wins this weekend, albeit against inferior opponents, that at least we think. Is this shooting woes, both from the free throw line and the 3-point line, a cause for concern going into their colonial season, in which they were picked to be number 3 in the conference?
Yeah, I think it's still early when we talk about that. I mean, even going back to all these games we've seen, we've seen a lot of missed free throws throughout the league. We've seen a lot of guys still getting, still warming up to the season. I was, when I heard Drexel was part of this, the Big Five sort of initially, I was a little concerned. I was wondering sort of what do they bring to the tradition other than, making it a little bit more feasible for the tournament style that they're going to bring. But, I've actually been impressed with not only sort of the talent that they're able to encapsulate there, but also sort of the vibe of the stadium and the DAC is pumping. They have guys that seem to really buy into that, and with Spiker there. And I'm looking forward to them. I'm going to be checking. I haven't been. I'll be honest. I haven't been watching them sort of before they entered the Big Five, and I'm looking forward to following them in their conference play this year. But yeah, I think it's a little early to pull the alarm on some of the shooting woes, but I'll be definitely locked in.
And Cope, how about you? Does, obviously, I will also be very locked into Drexel. Very excited to have them in the Big Five. But so far, shooting woes have been a little concerning. I know we're only 5 games in, but do you feel the same sentiment, Cope?
Yeah, it's still early on. It's just nice to see them get wins. They're going to have 2 more against mid-major competition, and then they're going to play Princeton, but Princeton obviously really good last year, really good this year as well. They're going to play Old Dominion, and they're going to play at Lafayette, and then they're going to play Princeton and West Virginia. So, they got to stack some wins here, build some confidence going into those games. But here's the thing about the shooting. Like, it's concerning that they're not making them. I think they're getting themselves like pretty quality looks. Justin Moore's got to knock some more down. Luke House has been hot. But he can't do it by himself. He's going to need Mate Okrus, who struggled last year, had a statistically down year for himself. And we talked about in our preview, like, they're going to need him. Drexel's going to need Okrus to be back at how we know he can be shooting the ball. I mean, he can shoot it really close, like at the 40% mark. And when you have a guy like that, it's huge for your offense, because the thing about them is they got to knock down some shots. They got to have Amari Williams. Like, they got to let him get on the block and not get double teamed all the time. Or if they are going to double team him, you got to make him pay and knock down shots, because you look at the LaSalle game. Even though he had 16, I thought it was a quiet 16 against Rokas Yotus, and then even the Temple game, like, he had 6 points. They doubled him a lot. They were very physical with him. They were playing very aggressively on the catch, knocking some balls away before the post-entry passes could even get to him. So if this team is going to knock down some threes and they're going to start to make some shots, it's concerning they're not going in. But if they start knocking them down, it's going to open up so much more for them. And Amari Williams is going to be able to be a lot more effective on offense for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he had that great game against Fairfield, maybe not as much against Queens on Sunday, but if he's their best player, he's a very important piece. He's gonna be the key to their success this year, 100%. And one more team that we haven't talked about so much, at least in terms of results, that we'll get into a little bit, is Villanova. Obviously kind of the crown jewel of the Big Five the last bunch of years. They absolutely slaughtered Maryland on Friday. They were up 39-15 at halftime. Ended up winning that game 57-40. And now they're going to enter the battle for Atlantis, where they will play Texas Tech first. That game is on Wednesday. So the day that you all are seeing this. Cope, we'll start with you real quick, and then Joe, definitely want to ask you about Villanova. But feast weeks here, these preseason tournaments are very, very fun. Obviously, we just had the Java games, the Gava game, excuse me. Cope, what do you feel about this Texas Tech matchup?
Yeah, this is actually really, really interesting. I really like Texas Tech. This team got a chance to make a tournament this year. They hired Grant McCaslin from North Texas, who I thought was a top 5 hire from the offseason. North Texas won the NIT last year, and then the year prior they had beaten Purdue, or excuse me, the COVID year they had beaten Purdue in the tournament. Like they've been very, very solid. Really good team of Conference USA. That's actually now in the American going to be playing against Temple. But you think about Grant McCaslin, what he did at North Texas. They played one of the slowest paces in America. They grinded you to a halt, and they wanted to play games low scoring and just grind you in the half court and slow you down. So the 3-0 this year. Ironically, they beat Texas A&M Commerce that we can't stop talking about. San Jose State and Texas A&M Corpus Christi. So not exactly like great competition they beat, but you look at them through 3 games. 264th in adjusted tempo. They got the 6th best defense, the 12th best effective field goal defense, 8th best 3-point defense. However, this team struggles on offense. They are 350th in 3-point percentage. They turn the ball over quite a bit. You have to imagine that with a lot of new guys coming. I like some of the guys they still have there. I like some of the guys they brought in. I think Pop Isaacs is a really good point guard. He brought in Joe Toussaint, who played at West Virginia last year, who played at Iowa before for Fran McCaffrey, just a really good best defender. Who's going to get up in your face and play the style of defense that Grant McCaslin wants to play. So I would imagine I don't think that Texas Tech's going to score 40 like Maryland did against Nova the other night, but I would imagine another low-scoring game here. But Nova clearly has the shooting. They have the offensive advantage in this game. You just got to play 40 minutes of defense. As if you can limit Texas Tech, they're going to try and limit you on the other end. So really, really interesting game. And this is going to be a big like measuring stick game for Villanova as well because it's another power conference team, another chance to stack a win on your resume. So I'm really looking forward to this. And as I kick this to Joe, I do want to ask you, Joe, as a St. Joe's guy.
Yeah,
been a while since your Hawks beat Villanova in the Holy War. It's been 2011 or 2012? I know it's been 10 plus years since
I think
it
2012.
happened.
Yeah.
But obviously tomorrow's Wednesday. That's when the Villanova Texas Tech game is going to be played. The following Wednesday is when your Hawks are going to go to the Finn. So I want to ask you how that game's going to go because I think this is the premier game in the Big Five, even more so than the championship game is because I think these are the 2 best teams in the Big Five. Really good Nova team with brings in a bunch of transfers. Big bounce back season for Kyle Neptune and the team as well, losing the first round of the NIT. And then the best St. Joe's Hawks team that Billy Lang's had there with a lot of expectation. So I want to get your thoughts on that game, being a St. Joe's guy and being the ultimate game.
Yeah, definitely. I'm pumped. And there's sort of like you said about Neptune. I mean, there's 2 guys here who, 2 coaches here that have their detractors, right? You have Neptune who fills in for Jay Wright, obviously, probably the biggest shoes that on earth to fill. And he hasn't had the start that he's really looking for. And then you have obviously Billy Lang on the other end, who is looking to sort of make himself a name after 4 years of losing, and a lot of criticism from local media, from St. Joe's people. These guys both kind of need to win this game. I don't know who needs to win it more, in the sense that if Neptune loses this game and he loses to Penn and St. Joe's in the same season in this new era of Big Five, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow for Villanova fans and for the Villanova staff, just from a logistics perspective, just sort of like an eye over perspective. That's tough to look back on as far as what they're able to contribute. And for Billy Lang, for him to beat Villanova, get St. Joe's right back where they want to be. The at-large bid is probably gone at this point, but get St. Joe's in a good position to go into conference play. So if I had a prediction, as much as I hate to say it, I like Nova in this game. I'm not sure what the spread will be. They just have too many guys. They're too good to be playing lackluster. They're too good to be getting beat by Penn and now coached by Penn. They just have guys that they brought in these transfers. I mean, you guys probably know about me. What do you guys know what that transfer class was ranked nationally? It had to be, I would imagine, top 10, right? With the guys they got, with the guys they brought in.
It was top
So
five.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It was
top
top
five,
five.
yeah.
Yeah,
And
sorry. Keep going.
you got, yeah, no, yeah. Just that's basically it. I mean, I love Eric Reynolds is a guy who when he goes nuclear, for St. Joe's, there's not much they can do. And we saw last night from Kentucky, the two they had. I don't expect that to continue, but in the same sense, that is Lang's offense. Those guys had the ultimate green light, and if the green light's hitting that night, then anything can happen.
Yeah, I mean, listen, Villanova talking about them. They had just an incredible transfer class. I mean, I don't think Cope. I know we've talked about this. I don't think we were really expecting that to that level. I knew they were going to bring in some people. Obviously, they tried to get in Hunter Dickinson too, which would have put them way over the map. They didn't quite get there, but they still had an insanely good transfer class. And for Joe's, yeah, I mean that backcourt is incredible. I think the best in the Atlantic 10, maybe even like I don't want to say one of the best in the country. That's obviously there's plenty of teams in the power conferences that also have great guys, but maybe one of the best in the mid majors. I mean, absolutely,
Yeah,
they're up there. So this game is going to be extremely interesting when that does happen on the 29th. Joe, I did want to ask you about Villanova too, like from a more macro perspective. Obviously, you can take into account preseason expectations and games that have happened so far. But what do you make of this Villanova team going forward? I mean, what are your realistic expectations for them for the 2023-24 season?
yeah. For overall, so I just talked to Jeff Nyberg of the Inquirer. He covers Nova pretty extensively, and he was saying basically that this Nova team, as despite the sort of slow start, and obviously last season missing the tournament, which is pretty historic for them in recent years. They're too big, they're too good not to sort of fail and to sort of dwindle out of the national spotlight. And the Big East, there's got the heavy hitters up top. I think Nova's probably falls maybe I don't know fifth, sixth. If you're looking like sort of holistically, maybe without some bias from the, obviously we're watching Nova all the time here in Philly. But like I said, I think the rest of the season, they had the chance to beat some good, like Jake said, some good, Power Five conference teams this weekend. Get some good wins on the board, and then when it's going into Big East play, I think that they'll figure this out. Like I said, there's too many guys on this team. You got Tyler Burton, a guy who I watched a lot of, being a St. Joe's fan over from Richmond. This guy's a stud. He can jump out of the gym. He needs to pick it up on the defensive end a little bit, I think. But you got Hakeem Hart from Maryland. You got Bamba. I mean, and add that to a guy who I think is probably the best player in the Big East, Justin Moore. So the sky's the limit as far as getting this thing back on track. Do I think they're going to win a national championship? I definitely don't. Do I think?
Might have gotten a little freeze here.
It's one.
There we go. We had a little freeze there. What was that? What was that last part you were saying?
So yeah, do I think they'll win another national championship? I hope not, and I don't think so. But as far as making a run in the tournament and getting a place in the tournament, I think they'll definitely be there in March. I think they can definitely beat pretty much anybody.
Yeah, 100% agree. I mean, Copa, I can let you talk about this a little bit more too. But what we were talking about in our season preview, definitely think they could be a second weekend team, for sure. And then a dark horse to get even further than that to the Final Four, and beyond. But Copa, I'll let you expand more on that too about your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that I think this team is wildly talented, though. I think you're right with all the transfers they brought in and with some of the returners they have, and then expecting a guy like Mark Armstrong to take a leap. I know I happen to be like my most improved player in Big Five this year, and he's even been starting over Hakeem Hart, who I thought was going to play. So all these transfers, and they're old transfers too. And a guy like Hakeem Hart that's played in some tournaments. Tyler Burton was on that team, that Richmond team that upset Iowa. Like these are old transfers. Lance Ware, like they've been in the tournament. They've been there before and played it, and won games in the tournament. So when I look at it from that perspective, it's like they're deep. They have experience even with the transfer. It's like, oh, they got to mesh new guys, but they're fifth years that clearly have bought into the system right away. You have a healthy Justin Moore this year, who was reported that was never really more than 70, 80% last year. He's now fully healthy. these sophomores. Brandon Hausen is another year older. Really, really like the potential of this team. So I almost think second weekend's like the floor here, for the standard of a program that Villanova is, and then to have the season that they did last year. Granted, injuries, new coach, you know, uh, playing some young players that usually doesn't happen in Villanova. I think the second weekend's kind of floor with this team, and they're so talented that I do think they can be a dark horse Final Four and maybe a national championship contender. Like if if Kyle Neptune is the coach that we think he can be, and this roster and this the talent that they have there is what we think it is. I don't see why this can't be a team that could potentially get to a Final Four. There's just too almost like St. Joe's. It's like I look at the roster and like it's way too talented to fail, and way too talented to not be a team that can make a deep run on the tournament.
Yeah, Kyle, do you think like sort of in the NIL era and the transfer era, do you think, that's brand of basketball that Villanova has built, as far as like having guys and keeping guys? Do you think it gets sullied a little bit when you sort of come into the era of net Division One, net power conference basketball, where you're bringing in new guys, you're transferring guys, you're paying guys? Is their brand like diminished in any way, or does it somehow affect the encore process for them?
Honestly, I think it helps their brand grow, to be honest. I mean, listen, you talk about, obviously this was right before NIL, but a lot of the 2010s were phenomenal for Villanova. I mean, they won 2 national championships in 3 years. They became a blue blood. They made, even more Final Fours in those championship years. So I think that if anything, it'll help them because they were getting guys anyway. Obviously the coaching change will affect things and has a little bit, just because Jay Wright had his process for a very long time. And I know Kyle Neptune might have similar processes too, but
Yeah,
different because he's his own coach. But I think it will actually only grow their brand. I think they're one of the top 10 brands, if not higher than that in college basketball. People know Villanova basketball is a factory and they will be good. And whether they do it their own way or whether they do it everybody else's way, that's up to them. But I think they will benefit a lot from this NIL things that are going on in college basketball. I mean, they even hired a general manager, and Cope, I'm blanking on the name right now. I know you know it, but Dunleavy, right?
Yeah, Baker
Ashley
Dunleavy.
Howard, wasn't it?
Yes.
Oh wait, no, Ashley Howard was.
Yes, Dunleavy.
Yeah.
Ashley Howard, but also Ashley Howard's helping run the NIL collective
Yeah.
for Villanova before he was, put back on their staff. But, there's a lot of different hands as we're talking about these names who are helping facilitate these NIL deals with these players. And, with the brand that Villanova is already, especially in this decade plus, I think it only helps their brand for sure.
Cool. I'm with you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. With hiring the general manager, like the alumni support and the alumni network they have there that is willing to give money and to give deals to their players, like I think it's only going to help what they do. I think the transfer portal is going to be a little bit more evident in what Villanova does. Now they're still bringing in freshmen, like they have a really good class that they've pretty much finalized for next year with 3 guys coming in. They have Jordan Dumont this year. The the development of guys is still going to be there. I don't think at the level it was with Jay Wright. I think more so it's like the transfer portal that I think is actually going to transform them a little more because it's something that you're not used to Villanova seeing. And when you have really good players in the transfer portal that you can get right away, even if it's only for between 1 to 3 years, like I think the NIL is even going to help on that front too. The alumni support they have a great practice facility. They play in a beautiful arena at the Finn. I think it's only going to help them. I echo everything Kyle said. But I think it's more like the transfer portal. It's actually going to be, how is that going to kind of affect what they do? Because I mean, you could count on one hand how many times Jay Wright brought in a transfer, and then this year they bring in 4 of them. They bring in a
Yeah.
bunch. And that's what half the team is going to be. So yeah, and I think Villanova's in a position. And I know St. Joe's has their own NIL collective. It's those mid-major schools I feel bad for because they don't have the money and like the resources to be able to move, pay guys like that. That's essentially, that's essentially what it is now.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I agree.
And Temple in the same breath too. I mean, they just announced, I believe it was Monday, that they they're teaming with the NIL store, which is teamed up with a bunch of colleges, a lot of Big Ten schools, honestly, most of them, to launch officially licensed merch and jerseys and whatnot for the players that they can, sell and whatever. It's a really cool thing. Obviously that's a smaller thing in comparison to what Villanova is doing, where they kind of have their own engine. And obviously we've talked about the Big East resources and the Villanova brand resources being more plentiful than maybe some of the other schools in the Big Five. Especially, once you get into, like, unfortunately, the Ivy League and Colonial and whatnot.
Yeah.
But this is college basketball now. This is college sports now. This isn't just basketball. Obviously, football is a ginormous, even
Right.
more so than basketball part of this too. But this is college sports now. They are fairly being paid, which is something that, Joe, I don't know if you've called for, but I think we both, Cope, have called for it in the
Yes.
past, whether on the podcast or just as friends talking over the years. It's great to see. Maybe it's a little bit less regulated than we all would like at this stage, but it's in its infancy, which is to be expected. I think there will be more so of that when, as the years go on and whatnot. But this is what we signed up for when we pushed for this, and I'm with it. I think it's a good
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And, there might be some instances where there's some not great things that come out of it, but also players were probably getting paid something anyway,
I
which
think
we
so.
all
Yeah.
know about. So maybe not from
I'm with you.
Villanova. I'm not accusing them of anything or any of the other Big Five schools, but over the course of college sports, I mean, obviously Charles Barkley is a famous example of that with Auburn. So it's a good thing overall, I think, and it's helping transform these programs, and hopefully attracting more talent to the big market that Philadelphia is, and some of these schools can hopefully tap into that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, Philadelphia market, just as an aside, I mean, you guys covered it great. I'm hoping to revive, get some people, more excited back in this tradition, because a lot of guys our age, I don't think are really as invested as, some of the older guys you always talk about, oh, in my day, the classic bit. But I think there's definitely some truth to that, right? There's guys that saw some legendary games out there. So hopefully, this tournament is something that can definitely inspire sort of a return to that kind of energy and atmosphere.
Yeah, absolutely. Cope, I just thought of a question I think you should ask Joe. I don't think I should be the one asking it. It's about a select venue being omitted from some games. So I'm gonna let you take it away with that.
Okay, so Joe, I mean, like our first really reaction to the new format was, of course, that there wasn't going to be any. There was going to be one game of the Palestra every year, and that was going to be the Penn home game. So I get it. You move to Wells Fargo, you have more seats. I get just the logistics of everything. It's easier to get to. People can drive to it. They can bus people there, and you don't have to just drop people on the side of the road on 33rd Street and that whole thing. Obviously, the capacity of Wells Fargo is more than the Palestra, but
Yeah.
what is your opinion on that? Because I've worked I've worked there. I work at Penn even, and every day like I'm yeah I'm like this is awesome. I get to be here. I still walk the halls
Yeah.
every
I
day
mean,
every time. So what are your thoughts on that?
yeah, I mean, going back to the old guy take, I mean, they say it's the best place in the world. I agree with them. I mean, I was there for Penn Nova, just walking around that place. I was waiting for get some popcorn, a big popcorn guy. I saw, you see the museum, all the great stuff, the legendary people that played in that arena, and when you're in there, you kind of just look around and you're like, this place is a relic of a different time. But there's also like sort of new stuff happening here. I mean, the idea, I guess, is the Wells Fargo name holds some weight in the sense that people who maybe are tuned out of the Big Five, like, oh, it's at the Wells Fargo, that could be a pretty cool event. Um, I think having one game at the Palestra is like almost it just, I don't know, man. It doesn't make much sense to me. I don't think you guys would agree. I think a lot of people, when this report came out, were pissed that the actual tournament itself wasn't going to be there, let alone just one game. Albeit it was a magical game that people got to witness there for the year. But I'm bummed out. I think logistically, like we talked about, as far as like attendance, I think the Palestra makes a lot of sense. It might be a little tight, but I still think that the Wells Fargo may be a bit of an overshot. So it's a negative for me, I think, to only play one game there, and I was hoping for a little bit more than that.
Yeah, I mean,
How
I
about
think,
you guys?
yeah, we both were as well.
Mhm.
Kobach, can obviously let you speak your piece, but I think I'll be a little bit more brief, so I'm gonna go first. But disappointing. I mean, I would have loved to have seen all of these games at the Palestra, or a lot of these games at the Palestra, especially for the triple header. Uh, there's only one Cathedral College basketball. There's only one home for the Big Five. Um, I also, on the same side, or the other side of that, rather, do understand that this is a business, and especially with Drexel coming in, they wanted to make this have more flair and bring this back. And to be fair, it did need some reviving. I think we can all, be honest with that and say that the Big Five did need some reviving. And this season's off to a good start so far. In that regard, I think the Penn win obviously helped that over Villanova. But it's just something that maybe we'll look back on this in 5-10 years from now and be like, it was a good change, because a lot of times change can be good.
Yeah.
But it definitely stinks that, taking away from the historic venue and only having one game there. Maybe there could have been more games there if not for the triple header, but we'll see what happens in the future with that. But Cope, I definitely want to hear your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that you guys said. Like, I started to warm up to the idea of Wells Fargo, and I think that the good thing about it, I guess, if there's one good thing you can take away from there only being one game of the Palestra every year, it feels like there was a little bit more urgency. I mean, that was the most packed I'd ever seen the Palestra for a college basketball game. Obviously, you go for the Catholic League and it's sold out. It's great. The corners are full. But that was the most packed I'd seen it. That was the best team that was going to be there. That was the only city opponent that was going to be at the Palestra this year. So I think it had a little more. It held a little bit more weight. I think was cool. But it also is disappointing to see that not every game's going to be there. I mean, it was a good idea last year to try and have a Big Five doubleheader there, but it was also Wednesday night, and the first game was at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, and not everybody could get there in time, and the attendance wasn't what we thought it was, and that kind of led to the new idea and the revival that we had. But yeah, it me personally, that place is awesome. It's my favorite place to watch a college basketball game. Like, I would want more games to be played there. Like I said,
Yeah.
like if that's the one game that's going to be played there, Joe, we're going to get that moment. Like that was awesome. It felt like the Big Five. It felt like the Big Five of old, to the point where you're like, that was
It
cool. I'm
was
not going to
awesome.
complain about it. Yeah,
I guess their thought process is that, like, the Villanova already plays the games in the Wells Fargo Center, and their fans just draw so well, right? It's a tough ticket all throughout the Big Five, just because when Villanova plays, because their fans go to every game. Um,
Might have had another little freeze there. I think he'll be back in a second though.
there, which I think is. Oh, sorry, that
There we go.
pop out
No,
again.
you're good. You're good. Wi-Fi
Oh,
stinks sometimes. It
my
happens.
bad. Yeah, my apologies for that, but yeah, I mean, I think they're assuming that those other teams can sort of make up for that. So
Yeah, definitely. And hopefully they do, especially if, they're Cope, like you were saying, they're starting to bus students down for it this year, which obviously was a point of contention we had, especially with our alma mater last year. Um, I think it's a great thing, and we'll see what happens with that. I think it'll be interesting to see the attendance like we were talking about earlier. All right,
yeah,
well, we're just getting about out of time here. I do want to ask you both one more question. It is not Big Five related, but it is very, very relevant to the time of year. Of course, Thanksgiving will be the day after this is posted. So, Joe, I'll start with you. I need to know your favorite Thanksgiving side.
all right. I'm gonna fire a hot take. I'm not a stuffing guy. I think stuffing is disgusting.
Yes,
Um,
thank you.
you like that? There you go. Mashed potatoes and gravy, number one. Next question, Coop to you. Coop.
I this might be the most controversial of the Thanksgiving sides. I'm a big green bean casserole guy.
Thank you.
Feel
All
like you
right.
love it or you hate it. Really big green bean casserole guy. But yeah, mashed potatoes and gravy I'll go with. Stuffing, if it's not crispy on the top and it's just the one you make in the box, it's not really worth it. But give me some green bean casserole. I'll go back for seconds and thirds of that guy.
I'm gonna go back for fourths of that, to be honest. Green bean casserole is my answer. It is my favorite.
There you
Cope,
go.
thank you for bringing that up first, because it does not get enough respect at Thanksgiving dinner table. I mean, listen, obviously you got your mac and cheese, you got your mashed potatoes and gravy, which is phenomenal, Joe. Depending on your family, you got a bunch of other stuff. Cranberry, I'm not a fan of, but that's just my opinion. Um,
Mac and cheese is kind of like the Drexel of the Big Five this year. Like, should it be there? I don't,
yeah, That's a very funny comparison. I love that.
Yeah, I know. I love
Um,
Drexel and I love mac and cheese.
yes, love them both. But listen, I mean, green bean casserole is phenomenal, and I think especially for me because when I was really really young, my grandma had her recipe and she made it. And then she passed when I was really young, but my mom has made her recipe ever since. And or my uncle, who we've been going to every year for the last, probably 6 or 7 years, and that's my mom's brother. So they've been carrying on the green bean casserole tradition, and it's a great one. It's a very 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 good dish. At least thirds of
Love
it, if not fourths of it.
it.
Part of the reason probably why I fell asleep on my uncle's floor last year after dinner because I had all that stuff from the turkey and everything. But pumpkin pie
Yeah,
too. Also, I know you can have that as dessert or you can have that as a side dish. But uh,
I
it's
love
also
it. I'm
it's also
playing in a football game on Thanksgiving this year, so hopefully I don't injure myself.
please don't. Please don't. Cope and I have also played in some Thanksgiving games too in the past few years. I don't think we are this year, but that's okay. Um, listen, I'm fragile. I don't need to be playing tackle anymore. I'm only 24 years old, but I'm fragile. So uh it's an issue. But Thanksgiving is my favorite holiday, and it seems like you
Agreed,
guys enjoy it a lot as well. So to you both, happy
for
Thanksgiving. I
sure.
hope you spend all of it with your family, enjoying some great food, watching some great football, and of course, feast week. Surrounding Thanksgiving. You can't forget about that. So yeah, that's I think all we got for this crossover episode between Five Features and the Big Five Pod. Joe, I'll kick it to you. Last thoughts here before we sign off. Anything?
Yeah, it was great meeting you guys, talking to you guys. Thanks for having me. Hopefully, I don't have any too bad takes out there today. So it was definitely a great time. I'm looking forward to Thanksgiving, and hopefully we can connect again soon.
Absolutely, absolutely. And Cope, anything from you?
Yeah, right on, Joe. Good talking with you. Hopefully, we can see you down at the triple header. Good luck on thanks.
Yeah,
Good luck in your Thanksgiving football game. Keep your head on a
thanks.
swivel. Don't get hurt. Don't. I always hear horror stories. People like end up in the ER on Thanksgiving. Definitely don't do that. But yeah, good
Yeah,
talking to you. Have fun. Enjoy yourself. Hopefully, we see you soon.
absolutely. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
listen, make sure you guys subscribe on YouTube to Five Features, of course. Make sure you follow them on Instagram. Joe, I don't know if you have any other social media. You can tell me at the end of this, but I know you got Twitter. So make sure you follow Five Features on
Yeah,
there. And of course, if you want to maybe listen to our podcast too, definitely go
definitely.
toward his. But if you want to get a little taste of the catalog here, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube as well. And of course, at Big Five Pod on Instagram and Twitter, and our audio only versions on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Joe, thank you once again so much for coming on. We very, very much appreciate it. And it was wonderful talking to you. We will definitely see you at the triple header. That is, of course, if the Union aren't playing
Oh
in
yeah,
the MLS Cup finals, because that will be work for me. And you all have a very, very happy Thanksgiving. Enjoy everything that I mentioned before, and we'll see you next time.